Welcome to MOTS, where we'll be applying the Manzer or mostly Thurlow scale of quantitative analysis of pop culture narrative through a binary system.
Or MOTS! This podcast contains spoilers, mature content, and language. Viewer discretion advised.
Hello there, welcome back to MOTS, where we have just seen Lady Bird, quite excellent film, and we're about to review it and discuss it. I, of course, remain Scott Thurlow. I'm here with Rich Perry.
Well, it was hella tight.
Indeed it was. Jane Manzer.
How you doing?
And Stephen Amosi.
Howdy.
And so I've got the logline for this one, and I'm going to go with my so-called teenage life, parentheses, during wartime. So if you've seen this movie, and if you haven't, we'll tell you why. But we're going to start off with the intro body conclusion with Ian.
Before I go in depth with that, I'm a huge fan of slice of life works. For those who watch our literature reviews at all, I put up things like, I think it's John Updike's A&P.
Yeah.
Things like that. And this is a slice of life work, literally the senior year of a young girl's life during the early 2000s. These are the Iraq War is happening.
2002, I believe, is...
So you're following... This is great because there's no huge, trouble that she's facing. She's facing what teenage girls deal with in their high school life, and she's has friends, trying to make new friends, for meet boys, get into college. She's dealing with economic issues that will become more prevalent in the coming years with the Great Recession. But it's like her father loses his job, and it's dealing with, and I think, a very accurate portrayal. And it feels like, in a sense, a memory someone has of a year in their high school. So some of it speeds by very quickly.
It's got not weird, but the way the time is condensed and sort of then expanded is. I see what you mean there.
But I feel it expands at what you would remember as the important points of that high school year.
Sure.
And then it's condensed at the points that speed by as your life continues. And in the end, she ends up going off to college in New York. And this is, the important point in the conclusion, which is, I think, the most contentious point we have, we'll discuss. And here's my point of view on it. She eventually goes off to college in New York, and she realizes she doesn't appreciate her home until she's in that scenario.
Sure.
She, often they have the portrayal of the person who's stuck between childhood and adulthood, and Lady Bird is certainly stuck between those 2 points. And she makes it's not a huge. She gets hospitalized for getting drunk at a party. It's not a huge issue type thing, but it makes her reflect on the fact that she wanted to escape her past, and now she misses her home. And it ends with her giving a touching call to her mother after they've been fighting this entire thing, and her coming to realize that I think she's more alike to her mother than she wanted to admit. And I think overall this is a very well structured movie. Narratively, it works perfectly. Again, I think it's up to you whether you like slice of life works or not. But I think this is one of the best ones I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, so I'll just say briefly that this normally isn't the genre and film for me, but I do agree, and we'll lay out why, I will get to it, that, it's a well-done, well-crafted film, and it's, like you said, it's just slice of life. It's a year in this 17, turning 18-year-old girl's life, and the things she deals with, and her struggles with school and family life, and again, maturing and so forth. So while again, it's not the genre I would gravitate towards usually, I did like it. So you're right about we were discussing precast, the contentious point is the way the ending sort of feels abrupt, but because, like you said, it's sort of like a memory, the whole film sort of feels like that. So I was going to dock off points for it, but I think I agree that the narrative was perfectly fine. It was well done. There was no real, it'd be a nitpick, essentially. And I think viewed through the light that you said, it's probably enough to give it a very solid 3. It was strong throughout. It was well done throughout, and it kept my attention, and was just damn well crafted, like I said. So it's all really
because we had talked about that conclusion, and we figured out. I think, if not all of us, at least me and you, has seen like at least 2 points where the movie looked like it was about to end.
Yeah.
And I think since they went past those points, it only could have ended as abruptly as it did. If they went any further, they would have had to spend more time on her being in college.
No, I agree. Like in retrospect now and talking it out, I think I agree with that. I think that's true.
Yeah, I basically completely agree with that. And there are things that I could talk about here, but I think I'm going to save a lot of that for style, especially Scott and myself having gone to Catholic school. We have a lot to say about the way that it was, the way that the way the school scenes were presented and things like that. And I guess I'll just leave it at saying they did a very good job with that part of it. I think that in all phases of this film, it was brief but poignant, and at times it was hilarious, and at times it was really touching, I guess, and emotional. And for somebody, I don't know if this is the first film that Greta Gerwig's ever done.
I believe it's her debut directing. Yes.
I know she's been an actress for a long time, but like, if this is her first directorial debut, she did a fantastic job.
See, well, I believe it is, if I'm recalling correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I heard that as well. So, as far as all phases of this, we call it intro, body, conclusion. You can call it whatever act structure you want. All phases, I think, were firing in all cylinders in this movie.
And what I particularly appreciate is that it's a very simple story. There's no great, pressing issues here. So if you look, from what I remember, again, this is not, as Scott said, it's not a genre that I gravitate towards necessarily or aimed at me. But Juno was a famous kind of aspect where dealing with being pregnant in that situation. You have My Girl, which I think this has a lot of tonal comparisons.
Tinges of, sure, I can see that. Yeah.
No one got stung to death by bees in this work. All of the problems are, in a sense, capture that idea of a teenager obsessed with their small world,
right?
And thinking that and over dramatizing those issues.
Sure,
I was very surprised that they went that route.
Yeah. Again, I love this. I appreciate the simplicity of this work.
Similar as well to Ghost World, if you want to say that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I never saw that.
That's a very
that's pretty solid though. Good call, Steve.
But yeah, if you like Lady Bird, you would like Ghost World. I think either the comic book or the movie, they both do a pretty good job of kind of having the same type of slice of life type of deal going on. But I'm going to give it a 3. I think everybody else said they were too.
Yep, officially 3s for all. All right, and that will bring us 2 themes with you, Steve-O.
All right. So there are a couple main themes going on throughout this, but a very important one is kind of the tenuous nature of teenagers' relationships with their parents. Is a very obvious one, and specifically Lady Bird's relationship with her mom, which is brutal.
It's rocky,
brutal throughout this, but there.
I don't know if it was brutal
throughout. I mean, she throws herself out of a car to stop a conversation because she's a because she's a teenager and she's
she's a dramatic.
Exactly, like jumping out of a moving car is
a bit of an
better than continuing a conversation with her mom.
Can I just
sure?
Jump into, because I think what's great is when the father makes the point that the mother and the daughter are so similar, and the daughter can't see that. But yeah, of course they're going to have a brutal relationship because they're both strong.
Right. They're both.
I think he says that same thing as well.
Somewhat bullheaded in terms of arguments, conversations. Neither one of them's ever going to back down to the other. But you see it throughout the movie. They both have this really deep love for each other, which keeps coming through in strange ways.
Sure.
like the dress scene where they're dress shopping and they're just arguing, they're full on yelling at each other, and then they find a dress oh, do you love this? Oh yeah, I love it.
That's great. It was a good little switch there. Yeah,
and that happens throughout the movie. It's not just they figure out what their relationship is at the end of this, and it turns out that they love each other. No, that's been there entire time.
Yeah, because even when Danny brings up how like harsh of a woman she is, she, like immediately jumps to her defense.
Yeah.
It's like, no, she's got a big heart. And
She's
has a lot of
warm
love
but
for me.
scary.
She says that
Something
early
like
in the
that.
she says that early in the movie where they're talking and she says it's like when they first meet and he says something like, your mom seems really harsh, and she's like, well, she really loves me a lot. And you're like, hold on, wait a minute, what? So it's a very deeply confusing and complicated relationship that she has with her mom. And on the other hand, she has a pretty simple relationship with her dad. He's kind of the pushover in the group. But that kind of, I feel like that kind of relationship dynamic is one that you see a lot. I saw that with friends that I went to school with, you know,
Sure.
when I was in high school with, you know, their dad was a big pushover and their mom would like get on their case all the time. And it was kind of like a very similar dynamic. I mean, I have a couple other things to say about theme, but if anybody else has anything they want to say, jump in now.
Well, I kind of brought it up in my description of the intro body conclusion, but it's the idea of your perception of scope and what's important in your life. And when you're stuck in Sacramento, and boy, that is awful. Like
Sure.
you think that everything you cause drama. When you're stuck in high school in Sacramento, and like everything seems so much more important until you're on your own in a city across the way. And I think that idea of growing up really comes across in this work. Like at the end, she rejects Lady Bird and goes by Christine. Is it?
Yes. Christine's
And at the moment when she realized, like, she's fighting for her identity the entire time.
Exactly.
She rejects her parents' identity of her, takes on Lady Bird, and then comes returning to it when she finally grows up. And it's interesting. It's a coming of age tale, and thus that's what happens.
I mean, this might be a funny way of phrasing it, but coming of age tales are sort of timeless in a sense.
Yeah.
So like it's sort of like going to work thematically pretty much always when done well, and this one is done pretty damn well, and maybe this crosses over to next thing sort of, but sort of what you said, when you're a teenager, the whole world seems like you are the whole world, right? So every little issue, it seems like the biggest thing ever to you. Like it's overly dramatic, like, my boyfriend and my best friend, now I'm fighting with my best friend, I'm fighting my parents, and I gotta go to prom and applying for college, right? It seems so much bigger in your own estimation because that's your world is what you're dealing with. So I think it addressed all that stuff pretty well, and certainly the family relationship angle dynamic that you mentioned is there because it's part of growing up. And I would say like growing pains essentially is like a core theme, and everything that comes along with that, like all the things you guys just said.
Right.
And yeah, I think it handled it pretty well and was portrayed in a believable and enjoyable manner, sometimes funny and sometimes serious, but it was all, I mean, that's how life is, right? Exactly. So that's all really I can say about themes.
I guess one more point with her relationship with men, I thought was very interesting. The two, I suppose the three relationships she has, if we ignore her, like the father-daughter relationship. So she goes with the nice guy kind of at first, the guy who's also creative, also
they're in theater together, I believe. Yeah.
And he turns out to be gay. And then she goes for the worldly guy who's detached and emo Kyle. Kyle and
you find out he's faux worldly.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's how worldly can you possibly be? He's 15 years old.
He likes to think he is. Like.
That's absolutely. It's she at every turn, like her idealism is rejected by reality. And it's very interesting to watch until she takes charge at the last one and ends up being. Oddly enough, for as irresponsible as she seems to her, she's generally the most responsible person. Like she's the one with the shoulder to cry on. She's constantly the one and. Like, when she becomes completely irresponsible, she ends up in the hospital alone.
But she bounces back quicker with each setback.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. And like I said, I think all that stuff was handled well, and it was sort of very nicely woven, as I've been using that phrase frequently throughout the narrative. And I gotta give it a 1, I think. We all are?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 1 as well. I also like to give like a quick little theme tip of my hat to like the nostalgia factor of this movie. And insofar as like, this made me not nostalgic for 2002. It wasn't like super strong with pop culture references or anything like that.
That's true.
But it made me nostalgic for like high school, and not necessarily wanting to go back there nostalgic, but like I was like, oh shit, I remember all these people. I remember the archetypes that I knew in high school, and how well this movie does them.
Sure, you're right. You're right. Good
so
point.
I think that was definitely in mind when she was directing, and she wrote this too, right?
I think so.
And writing this. But anyway, that's I don't want to go. Yeah. Yes.
I agree, and we'll probably speak more about, like you alluded to earlier, in style, but it was like themes is getting a 1, and that will bring me to antagonists. So, interesting one. I'm going to default go to my abstract thing, because I don't think, like, you might make an argument that Christine / Lady Bird and her mother, like her mother's the antagonist, but I don't think that's actually true.
At all.
Yeah, you tell me if you guys disagree. It's just, like I said, dealing with growing up, like having to mature and going through your senior year of high school. Like, almost everybody has a similar experience, and yeah, it's kind of frightening because you're dealing with, like I said, being not thrown out, but having to deal with the world at large that's greater than your small little high school universe where every single problem seems like the biggest thing in the world. So it's just that, I would say, just the messiness of life, especially when you're a teenager on the verge of adulthood. So I don't know if anybody else has other arguments for antagonists, but certainly I think I'm calling it that, and I think it was, like we just said, sort of tied into themes, handled and portrayed very, very well.
It's as good an antagonist as any.
Well, I would say, so you're kind of for an external antagonist in terms of this, like the world at large against the teenager, right? And I'm kind
dealing
of
with tween problems
in a right, like in a similar way to the argument that you just made. I would make an argument for like the internal struggle.
I can see that too.
She's going through being the antagonist, like her own like burgeoning adulthood.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
like
I agree.
Struggling with still kind of being a kid, but becoming, having all these adult experiences and learning how to cope with them, because that's kind of what high school is.
Yeah, exactly.
So would you say that Lady Bird is the antagonist to Christine?
Ooh, I kind of like that. Yeah,
that's actually a good way of phrasing it. That's kind of or Christine is the antagonist to Lady Bird. Lady Bird's the protagonist of this movie, right? Christine shows up at the end and wins.
But Christine wins.
Yeah, for the most part. And then she becomes Christine. She casts off the Lady Bird sort of persona in a sense. But I do like the internal / external, like regardless, she's like dealing with all that shit both within her own mind and with like the problems at large, like I said, her family life and applying for college and all that.
Hormones, guys.
yeah, sure. Yeah. Good one, I guess.
Either way, I really liked
hormones.
it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's more than enough for antagonist to get a 1 from me.
It's an antagonist we can. Sorry, I was going to try to drop my voice up. It's an antagonist we can all identify with because we've all faced it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was well handled and well portrayed. So I think we all agree 1's on that. Mm-hmm. And that will bring us to, speaking of good transition as well, protagonist with Rich.
Lady Bird. She's a very solid protagonist. I was surprised at how level-headed they kept her. Like of course she made her teenage mistakes and like had her pitfalls, but like she just rolled with the punches, literally rolling out of the car to avoid breaking anything other than her arm. But also like made a lot of the right decisions towards the end of the story. And I really got not much more to say.
I was going to say that, like, while she was doing teenager things, yes, of course, but nothing so egregious that, like, you could point to, like, that was just a dumb mistake move. She was just, again, dealing with and trying to handle all the things that
Jumping out of the car might have been...
I mean, yeah, it was like... I get it, but, like, if anything, that's the biggest one, I think, and that happened at the beginning of the film. So she didn't do anything crazy or, like, again...
Plus, and it was on an open road. There were, like, no other cars. So.
Yeah, it was like the backward dirt road or whatever.
Who hasn't jumped out of a car when they were a teenager?
True.
I didn't.
Who hasn't thought about it, at least.
But anyways...
I certainly thought about it.
I do agree with all that. And yeah, I think we're going to get the actress's name wrong because she has a very non-standard Irish name, Celtic name. So...
I want to say
spell it
Cersei,
out.
but I've also never heard this name somehow, even though she's a pretty big actress right now in Hollywood. I want to say Saoirse Ronan.
I just assume
Miss
that
Ronan.
everybody's been pronouncing it wrong.
Ms. Ronan.
We'll have to get her on the horn and ask her how to pronounce her name correctly. But she was, I do want to bring up that, not last year, but the year before, I believe, she was also in Brooklyn and playing the lead,
She was.
the lead in that. And she's very, very good in this. And yeah, I think she brought this character.
Different type of role
Oh, yeah,
as well.
for sure.
Strangely, like, they're probably the same age and just a completely, like, totally different mindset of character.
But I think she did a great job of portraying, again, the struggles and all the things that come along with being a young woman verging on to adulthood and the way in her situation. And like I said, so I'm giving her a very solid 1.
I agree, and I just want to point out that although I've never had the experience of being a 17-year-old woman.
Not yet. I never was. I am not now. Still 17-year-old girl.
There was something very cathartic about watching her performance in this story. That like there's a universality to it, and the trauma of being young, and I have to give it credit for that because again, there's parts that I would never understand I've heard on actually interviews people saying like, "Oh, this is great. This reminded me of me and like me and my mother back in the day, my mother and I." But I don't know. I had a smile over like, "Oh, I've had this sort of awkward moment in high school." As well.
I see what you mean for sure.
It was
First
cathartic.
heartbreak.
Yeah, and everything that comes along with it, like I said. So
yeah, and like how awkward that always is, and like how trying to figure out how to navigate that bullshit for the first time.
Sure.
I just remember it being as uncomfortable as it was made to seem in this
my
movie.
favorite, trying to hide the fact that you're high as fuck from your parents.
Yeah. She did not do a good job.
No, not at all.
It was pretty obvious, I'm sure, to her mother.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I love that group shot of them like waiting for the food to warm up.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I've been in that position.
They have like four
times.
boxes stacked on top of each other in the microwave.
You're just watching it, yeah. It was like it was a perfect slice of life little moment that they had, and it was very. I thought it felt very true and very realistic. So
Absolutely.
It was quite.
So, so it looks like she's getting a solid or strong 1, definitely.
Unos.
All around, all right.
And a 1 for the Holy Ghost.
Yeah, 6 inches for the Holy Ghost to get a 1. That'll bring us to secondary characters with Ian.
So I'm going to bring up 2 here, and then I'm going to pass it along. By the way, the supporting cast overall did a fantastic job and felt very real.
Yep, absolutely.
But Laurie Metcalf played the mother, and she did a phenomenal job with that. The way Lady Bird and her mother played off of each other, the way she was, in a sense, in a lot of ways, the responsible mother version of her daughter.
Yeah.
You felt that they were actually related, and or at least I did.
I bought that.
And,
yeah, for sure.
And she should at least get a nod for best supporting for her portrayal of this, because I thought it was phenomenal. I also just want to call out Stephen Henderson, who we saw last year in Fences. And
He did a great job too.
He did a great job in Fences.
He lets her part, but he.
I like him as the kind of. He has great comedic timing. He's a very expression. His face is very expressive.
Yeah.
And it carries half of the joke.
First one to cry wins.
Yeah, that was a great scene. I think we all love that part.
And I want to see him in a lot more things. I hope he gets more roles.
He's in like 4 scenes in this movie, maybe like 5. But that scene and the scene where he's just sitting by himself after the play at like the party, and what's her name? Julie comes down and sits next to him, and they don't say anything to each other. And all of a sudden, he just says, "Nobody understood it."
Yeah.
That had me.
It was a great
dying.
moment.
I was cracking up at that part.
No, yeah, it's perfect. Like you said, very expressive. Like he just kind of comes into a scene and does that kind of thing, and it's perfect every time.
So perfect.
Definitely leaves an impression.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Sorry, he was great. I think Julie, her best friend, did a really good job.
Mm-hmm.
The popular girl,
Jenna.
what's her name? Jenna did a good job as well.
See, they could have easily made her like
I thought they were going to...
one-note vapid character.
Exactly.
It actually gave her a lot of depth.
I thought they were going to do that with her, and I'm glad that they sort of subverted it, or at least, again, rounded her character out more than just being the popular bitchy girl, if you will,
So-
like that kind of cliche.
I think that's what makes a lot of these like follow-up twee movies bad, kind of, is that they have these supporting characters that are just garbage, one-dimensional, like shitty
Yeah,
characters
they're just one-note things.
that
for the most part.
are there to like make this story feel like it's this cutesy, little twee story, and the ones that are good put so much more depth in these characters.
Exactly.
I love the conversation they had in the pool when she talks about how she wants to stay where she's at, start a family, and have her kids go to the high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, really? You don't want anything more? She's like, no, I'm happy here. I
I'm
love
set,
it here.
yeah.
That's actually a great point that I just realized is Kylo Ren character is, in a sense, what her children will be like. Because he's I went to Xavier because my father wanted me to go there, and all I want to do is make my father happy. And it's these people stuck in that kind of
mindset.
cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you guys wanted to mention it. I got a couple more characters.
Yeah,
I was gonna leave them.
I'm just gonna pick up one more. I might steal yours, so sorry, but Danny.
Yeah.
Is Lucas Hedges, I believe, is the actor's name. We just talked about him because he happened to be in 3 Billboards as well, and he was in Manchester. He just does a great job every time. He plays her Lady Bird's first boyfriend, who turns out to be a closeted homosexual, but it's not like a big thing. But
Right.
he does a great job. Like, they meet during theater, and they have a very pretty tender relationship until she discovers that he's actually gay, and then of course she goes to Kyle, and again he plays again. You can see his character being sort of just the detached, I'm above everything, like that guy. That
That was the perfect noise for him. By the way.
which is basically you've seen that cliche, and like you said, Steve-O, you've certainly probably known people like that in high school.
I've probably been that cliche.
Or
a
maybe
lot
it
of
was
times,
him. But either way, I think they rounded it out pretty well, and Lucas Hedges always does a great job, like I said.
Yeah.
So there's a couple others, but those are the ones I like below, or let's say, after mentioning her mother and father, which I think for sure I agree with, had the best performances of the secondary cast. But
Sorry, Rich, were you going to say something?
You got anything else there? Any other characters you want to
All of
mention?
you
Rich?
took all of the
Yeah,
things
I know.
that I was going
Sorry.
to say, so I guess I'll just... I liked her brother and his girlfriend, Shelley.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. We didn't mention them.
Like that.
Miguel and Shelley, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Miguel. And I like the relationship. I like the fact that him and Shelley started cleaning up their act towards the end.
Yeah, everybody sort of matures in
And
some way.
and I love the conversation that Shelley has with Lady Bird about her mother. She's like, I think she's kind of cool. I mean, she took me in when my family kicked me out for whatever reason.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Premarital sex or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
premarital
That
sex
was
or whatever.
That's a funny line. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it's all like I said. They could have in a lesser movie. They would have been one note cliches and stereotypes, but it was very refreshing.
Seems like she really knew when these characters were starting to hit that point where they were on the cusp of just falling off and being one note characters, and then threw in that little bit.
Right, and then they all get rounded out. Yeah,
And really impressively, without breaking stride at all in the script, this movie, in an hour and a half, takes 10 supporting characters and gives
At
them
least.
all dimension. Gives them all depth.
for sure.
In such a short amount of time, has these little throwaway lines that give so much insight into each one of these characters, and just the way that it shows them.
So I have an interesting point to that. Jules, her best friend, is absolutely in love with one of the teachers. They don't dwell on it at all. It's kind of a
It's
fact.
brought up
This is-
twice, maybe.
This is a part of her character. And then the teacher you see being a teacher, but then you see him with his pregnant wife.
Yeah.
And just small scenes like that add to them being actual people in a world versus just archetypes.
Cardboard cutouts. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think we all agree on that point, and give secondary
Ones,
a
yeah.
strong one.
Yeah.
And that's going to bring us back to dialogue with you, Steve-O.
Dialogue is one of the strongest parts of this movie,
If not the strongest.
if not the strongest.
Yeah, I would agree.
It is it's fast, but it's not like Aaron Sorkin.
I was gonna say, I
fast
knew you
or,
were gonna fucking say
Gilmore
Sorkin.
Girls
That's-
fast.
Yeah.
It's fast, but it's not unbelievably fast. It's super witty, but it's not unbelievably witty.
Exactly.
Everything is funny, but it's down to like character timing and things like that, and like joke the way that the jokes are like spread out in the script. It's really touching at certain points. That I don't think there's a thing wrong with this script except for one thing that Ian pointed out, which I don't even know if he wants me to bring up at this point, but
you can bring up your nitpick if you want.
We were talking about this on the way driving back from the theater, and Ian said that the one tiny little nitpick that he had was that it's kind of seemed forced when they talked about what year it was in the beginning, which I can see.
There was an establishment. They felt they needed to establish what year it was, so it kind of an unnatural dialogue drop.
Hey, here in 2002, and then blah 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 blah.
And when there were so many other references to events in the world that you could have placed the time frame
easily enough. Yeah.
But regardless, so since I was talking anyway, I just want a quick thing is that I will give a 1, even if the script was horrible, like the dialogue was mediocre. I would give it a 1 simply because the acting and the present between the mother and the daughter and their arguments and their fights are, especially the opening scene fight between them in the car.
Yeah.
It's so believable, but so well structured. I was seriously impressed by every time they fought.
The fact that every single one of their arguments crops up out of nowhere, and you could see you could see where each one of them knows they should stop, but they take that extra step because they don't want to be the one to back down.
It happens like probably 8 or 9 times throughout the movie where they get into fights, and like they all start from this like innocuous statement or this like this bad idea. Like the first fight that they have, they finish listening to a book on tape, and then like both of them are crying at the end of it. It's the Grapes of Wrath.
It is the Grapes of Wrath. Yes.
They're both crying at the end of it. And then Lady Bird goes to turn on the radio, and her mom's like, "Can't we just sit in silence for a minute?" And as soon as as she says that, like the audience, so watching it as an audience member, you're like, "This is a terrible idea." Like, and like as soon as they start talking to each other, you can just see them butting heads, being passive aggressive at each other, and like it's so believable. It's so much like arguments that I had with my parents when I was a teenager, because you're just kind of a dick when you're a teenager, and parents have had it up to fucking here with your 17 years of bullshit at that point.
Sure.
So like it was such a like all those arguments are so believable and so good.
No, you're right. I agree with you guys. It was all very organic. I know you're going to reference Sorkin-esque. It wasn't that, but like you could see, like that's why, like the opening setup is they're sharing a moment, they're enjoying having listened to a book on tape, and then instantly they start like ragging on each other.
Yeah.
All right, so just one scene that I particularly love and moment of dialogue was when they're trying on the dresses for prom, and
that's a very good
asks, "Do you like me?"
I knew you were going to bring that up.
And and the mother goes, "I love you." And like, that's not what I asked you.
She's like, yeah, of course you love me.
The mother is trying to say everything that she can not to say to her daughter that she doesn't like her as a person. And it's such a beautiful...
It's somewhat bittersweet at the same time, yeah. So, I mean, I agree. I don't have much more to say about dialogue in general. I just thought it was well handled, well written, like you said. Very excellent script, and everyone delivered their lines perfectly believably, and that's why it made it feel sort of fresh, even though you've seen this sort of story lots of times.
Yeah, and I want to really quickly leapfrog off of what you just said, Ian, because that is such an important thing. I mean, probably something that I should have brought up and talked about a little bit more in themes. Like, that's such an important thing in this movie is her mother is unwilling to say that she likes her, but I think it's pretty clear by the end of the movie that she does like her as a person, right? So it's like, what is the... Like, she just stays up all night writing letters to her. Yeah. And, I don't know. I thought that was pretty...
No, I was going to make the letter thing if you didn't.
Important and interesting.
But even that, like, even though we don't know what's in the letters per se, it still counts as them having an exchange in some sense. And it certainly, like, again, fills out and rounds out the relationship with each other and makes it, grow.
Absolutely.
When you find out, what I also liked about that is, like, it reveals that she was worried about what Lady Bird would think about her.
Yep.
Which is why she'd done so many different...
Yeah, like 20 different
20 different rewrites.
Yeah.
Sure. Yep, so it looks like dialogue gets a 1 all around, and it's going to bring me to style. So I'll start off with what Steve was saying, since he and I did attend a Catholic high school when we were teenagers.
Uh-huh.
So like so given that, like they nailed a lot of the stuff that like, you guys who didn't, you're like, did they really do it? Like, yeah, it's spot on. Like it's exactly like that. So that, like, that part of the style I thought was like, it got me into it because of its frame through that. But everything else too, just the cinematography in general, I thought was pretty good. There's some great shots of like, I usually go for like the landscape things, like in the city, both in New York and in Sacramento, and the surrounding little areas they hang out in. But yeah, I just thought it was like, the framing was pretty solid throughout. She clearly knows what she's doing behind the camera, so I don't really have much more to say specific. It was just damn good style, and I guess I'll give it credit on this. I think there's something that we all pre-discussed, that they didn't have an overabundance, like slapping you in the face with period references and pop culture references to the early 2000s. There were like a couple of things, but they were almost like background things. They added the detail. It wasn't like, hey, remember this from 2002 or whatever? Yeah. So like I give credit on that, and it just rounded out the believable like period piece, if you will, about it.
Except for the bombardment of Baghdad.
Yeah, but I kind of like
it was
not that I liked it, but it made sense.
Who wasn't watching that stuff?
Yeah, that's what we were doing in 2002. It was on the news constantly, so you can't help it. But anyway, so I mean, if anything, you guys can open up to you talk about anything specific, but.
Well, I generally tackle genre in here, and this is a coming of age work. I felt that the points they brought up, like, the idea is that it's for people of that age, and for older people who want to reflect on like kind of growing up and tackling issues within like that are difficult to address.
Sure.
So they bring up a lot of like kind of sex, but not in the comedic way, but actually the like difficulty and the like awkwardness.
Well, how awkward it can sometimes be.
And I think it handles the intended, I hate to say it, business of a coming of age story very, very well.
Sure. I get what you mean.
And also narratively, I think it like there's no threads unleft. It was a perfect like.
It's very tightly written. Like there's exactly so.
I just said it's tight.
It's hella tight.
Hella tight,
right, Rich? Yeah.
Hella tight.
Sorry, I didn't have the proper adjective to that.
That was hella tight.
Like even that, like so that line we thought was funny because it's again like sort of a
that is
slang
a reference,
right?
Sure.
But it was only there one time, and nobody else said anything like that, so it was perfectly fine. So anyway,
well, that was basically his catchphrase.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned the high school thing. There were several things throughout that were the same. Like, there's a scene where they're at a dance and a nun comes by and says, "Leave 6 inches for the Holy Spirit." Nuns actually do that. Like, if you want to know what it's like to attend a Catholic high school, go watch this movie.
To a highly accurate degree, yes.
And it's pretty spot on. But apart from that, the soundtrack was decent. I thought one of the weaker parts of this movie, actually. I expected it to be like really like rooted in that time period, and they had like "Crash Into Me" by Dave Matthews, which I guess is kind of there, but like that's an earlier song.
That was the thematic use of that.
It was
glad that they did
for sure. I'm kind of glad that they didn't do that too.
Exactly.
But it's not it's not like it's a memorable soundtrack.
I feel like if they did, they should have done like not like pop hits like most movies usually do. Like maybe pick some other like indie or when they went to go see that band.
So that's what Juno did, right?
Yeah.
And like that's a portion of why Juno, not why it was good, but like it was a portion of the stylistic elements that made it a solid movie. And this movie didn't seem that interested in the soundtrack, which is a weird departure for like a twee movie, if you want to call it that. But you know, that was just my take on it. I don't remember that much. You said there was a Timberlake song on there. I didn't even recognize it. You know, like it's not that I'm, you know, Not that I perhaps would. I guess I never really listened to that much Justin Timberlake. Now I just seem defensive.
I just oppose it.
So there's this one part where the mother's driving back, and it's actually kind of a long shot of her in the car looking at things, and there's a song playing. I don't remember what song it was, and then it has the abrupt cut off, and she's leaving the car. And the soundtrack wasn't great, but I think there was some effective use of it, not as a...
There was.
This is the year this is, so we're going to play that. This is
exactly.
thematic uses of it.
There was. It wasn't as standout as other elements of this film. So in the sense that I am usually the guy that brings up songs or whatever, soundtracks or sound effects or whatever, I figured I had to address it, and it's just not that memorable to me. It's not going to be anywhere near the thing that I remember about this movie, we'll say. Sure. Now, that being said, other stylistic elements of this movie really did stand out and were great. The cinematography, as you mentioned, Scott, was really good. Just kind of the feel of being a teenager. The feel of, as you mentioned earlier, Ian, this being kind of a memory of high school, and like the less important elements just rushing by, and the more important things like dragging out to almost an awkward degree at points. I thought that was brilliant, and like I thought that the pacing of this movie was brilliant.
I noticed.
Sorry,
not to. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
But like I noticed that
I'm rambling.
At least in the beginning, like throughout the movie, a lot of shots were blocked off to make the characters seem smaller than the surroundings.
Yes, good call.
And like as it went on, and like she grew more into her own, like things just started fitting.
The ratio was sort of I did notice that. That's right.
To that point, though, there's one I really noticed, which was when after Danny and Lady Bird break up, and she's working at the coffee shop, the moment where he comes back to her and is like crying on her shoulder, and it's them framed in a doorway, but like it's almost minuscule compared to the brick wall. And I love a lot of the shots in this, and I don't usually pick up on shots necessarily, and I noticed a lot of great ones.
Sure.
Yeah, that's almost like a comic, like long
kind of
frame, you know? Like
I see what you mean.
Panel. Anyway, whatever. I could talk about style for
either way, though. The style was pretty damn good in Lady Bird.
I'm gonna give it to 1.
Did a good job.
Give it A1.
And we're all giving it 1s, and that'll bring us finally to recommendation with Rich.
Yes, I recommend this movie, especially if you were a teenager in the early 2000s.
Oh yeah,
I was getting those nostalgia feels.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's because we were talking about this before, that a lot of the movies aimed at teens now, like, don't really have that as much heart as this one.
Agreed. Yeah.
And like they just kind of like, you have your stock group of characters. The other protagonists go through like an outlandish adventure to culminate in their deciding to become an adult. And it was refreshing to have things be so down to earth and normal.
Yep.
And I'm glad it decided to go with that.
They did that way. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Sorry, before you go, that it was again. I think refreshing is probably one of the best ways to describe this movie, because you've seen this coming of age story, like I said, a lot, but it's very earnest about it, which is why that makes it feel refreshing, I think. So yeah, I definitely recommend Lady Bird. I mean, it's the best reviewed movie so far ever on Rotten Tomatoes, and looks like we're probably going to give it a 10 right now, and I think deservedly so. So yeah, even though you may not be a 17-year-old tween, you'll probably still enjoy this movie, because we're not, and we still did, because it's, like I said, it's very, very well crafted. So,
if I may, 17-year-olds are not tweens; they're full-on teens.
I thought it was between that. It doesn't matter.
Whatevs.
Let's look at it right. You know, let's get the terminology right.
Sure, fine. Sorry, you're channeling your own 17-year-old.
Exactly.
Self. Anyway, go ahead. I think you're about to say something.
I had a really weird experience with this film, watching it. Because I'm slightly older now, gonna be
old man.
Then
put in an old age home soon. And in a sense, the person I identified with most was the father there, and I watched this. In a sense, like I felt paternal towards Lady Bird. I was slightly disappointed with her when she made bad decisions. I felt like almost proud of her when she made the right decisions, and it made me have to reflect on a couple of things in my own life, like on how and I think this is a really like powerful, and even though it wasn't made for me, this is not generally the type of like movie I watch. I caught some feels for this, so I think it's a very powerful work. I think that it is rightfully so reviewed as well as it is, and yeah, I have to give it a full recommendation for it.
All right.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying that I'm going to give it a recommendation. I think that it's a testament to the script and the director that a movie about such boring ass shit could be so enthralling. Like, and you know, that's all about the writing and the directing and the acting. It's about all of it. It's about the entire production, but that being said, that just means that I am going to tell people, if they want to watch this type of, if you want to watch a slice of life movie, if you liked Juno, if you liked Ghost World, you're gonna love this movie. Whatever. There are a bunch of other movies that I could
in a similar vein,
like in this, in this type of way. But it's a great movie on its own merits, regardless of the genre. This movie stands up with any other movie that came out this year. I don't know if it's my favorite movie of the year, but it's definitely up there. And I'm going to definitely give it a recommendation, strong recommendation.
All right, looks like one's for everybody. Any final thoughts before I give out the scores? I can actually do the scores this time. It requires no math.
Hey-o.
We all gave it 10s, giving Lady Bird a 10 overall. And I think, like you just said, it deserves all the credit it's getting because it's that well crafted of a movie, even if, in general, as we alluded to, that it may not be the thing we gravitate towards. It doesn't matter, though. It's just done so well and so enjoyable that you can't help kind of like this movie. So I think that's all I can say. But, yeah.
So on a in your own mind, do you think of this as a 10 movie?
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is my question every time.
I think it is. Yeah, I can't. Anything I would say that to make it not a 10 movie would be a very splitting hairs nitpick.
Yeah,
right.
So it'd be very minuscule.
Yeah, so I think to answer your question, Steve, well, yes, it is in this case.
I think every decade has its that coming of age tale, and that defines like. I think that this is probably it for.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
For the 2010s.
Yes, that one work that really resonates beyond taking the genre and elevating it above and becoming a classic.
Yeah,
and again. I didn't give this a 10 score because everyone else gave it everyone else scored this so well.
Sure.
I gave it a 10 score because I felt the movie was phenomenal.
And honestly, the fact that everybody else loves it, I feel like usually takes points away in your view. Yes. So like,
I like to be the contrarian. But
yeah, but the fact that this time you overcame even that. So
I was thinking about saying that, like, I don't know if I would give this a 10. If it was just, a scale of like, say 1 to 10, what do you think of it? I might give it a 9 or something like that. But honestly, what you just said, Ian, you're absolutely right. Like maybe every 10 years or so, there's that movie that is like your coming of age movie, and this is going to be it. I can't think of anything else before Juno in like 2003 or 4 or whatever it was when that came out. That has anywhere near the cultural impact that this had.
My comparison to My Girl, I think, stands with that because that was that. I don't know when it was
90s,
or that this is going to have. I think.
Yeah.
Sure. So I'll try to maybe I'll bring a quote in from one of our favorite films that possibly is that sometimes there's a film, and I think we can say that about Lady Bird.
Absolutely.
So I think anyone got any closing thoughts on that note? All right.
Well, it was hella tight, yo.
Yep. Hella tight. Go check it out. And we have given Lady Bird a 10. This has been Bon MOTS. I, of course, have been Scott Thurlow, here with Rich Perry.
Night.
Ian Manzer.
Night.
And Stephen Amosi.
Good night.
See you next time. Cheers.
Editing and engineering by Scott Thurlow. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.